A dark, decaying apartment interior set in an old Soviet-style building from the 1960s. The room is filled with heavy silence and the overwhelming sense of dread. Dust floats visibly in the stale air, lit faintly by the flickering light of a single exposed bulb swinging slowly from the cracked ceiling. The wallpaper is torn and peeling, revealing moldy plaster beneath. The wooden floor is warped and creaks under any pressure. At the center of the room stands a tall, life-sized female mannequin, faceless, featureless, made of cracked porcelain, with deep gouge marks carved across its torso and limbs. One of its arms is missing. The other is extended, pointing directly at the viewer. Its posture is twisted and unnatural, as if it had moved mid-step. It wears a torn, blood-stained vintage dress from the 1940s, yellowed with age and rot. Behind the mannequin, there's a large antique mirror with a rusted golden frame. In the mirror's reflection, the mannequin is not visible. Instead, a dark, ghostly silhouette of a woman stands in its place. Her eyes empty, mouth open in a silent scream, face pale, her body wrapped in shadow. Her reflection seems to stare directly into the viewer's soul. The wall around the mirror is covered in black, scribbled writing in an unknown language, as though someone had frantically tried to warn others. Next to the mirror, a broken photo frame lies on the floor, showing a smiling family, but all the faces have been scratched out. The atmosphere is cold and suffocating, with faint sounds of distant whispers and a low, vibrating hum barely audible. Faint handprints are smeared along the walls in dark red. The only light source is the swinging ceiling bulb and faint moonlight bleeding through broken blinds. A heavy fog seeps in under the door, and something moves just beyond the frame, a presence you can feel but not see. The air itself seems alive with malice. The camera angle is low and wide, cinematic, focused on the mannequin in the foreground with a sharp depth of field. Everything is highly detailed, cracked textures, light scattering through dust, shadows stretching unnaturally across the room. The color palette is cold and muted, deep blues, grays, faded reds, and sickly yellow. The visual style is inspired by The Conjuring, Silent Hill, Hereditary, and The Ring, dark psychological horror with a surreal twist. Rendered in ultra-realistic style, 4K resolution, horror concept art, high-texture detail, volumetric lighting, depth and fog, strong emotional tone of isolation and fear. Deep inside a forgotten, overgrown forest under a blood-red twilight sky, a decaying wooden cabin stands isolated among twisted trees. The surrounding forest is deathly quiet, with mist slowly crawling across the moss-covered ground. The trees are unnaturally tall and gnarled, their bark blackened and split, as if scorched from within. The branches form claw-like silhouettes against the dim sky, and crows silently perch, unmoving, as if watching. The cabin is ancient and crooked, covered in mold, vines, and symbols carved into the wood, strange, runic markings that seem to shift when stared at too long. A single window glows faintly from within, casting a pale yellow light into the fog. In front of the cabin stands a human-sized straw effigy, shaped like a person, but with a deer skull for a head, its arms outstretched in a ritualistic pose. Red cloth is tied around its limbs, fluttering gently in a wind that cannot be felt. Around the effigy are hand-dug shallow graves, half covered by fallen leaves and dirt, with small wooden totems planted above them. The cabin door is slightly open, revealing pitch-black darkness inside. No visible interior, only a feeling of cold dread. Faint whispers echo through the trees, but no source is seen. On the roof, a dark humanoid figure crouches motionless, with elongated limbs and glowing white eyes, watching silently. The entire environment feels haunted, cursed, as if nature itself has turned hostile. The ground is littered with animal bones, broken lanterns, and torn clothing. A trail of bloody footprints leads from the forest edge to the cabin door, then suddenly disappears. The lighting is low and cinematic, with high contrast between the glowing mist and the shadows in the trees. The scene is highly detailed, realistic textures, cinematic horror atmosphere, soft volumetric lighting, dramatic fog, muted tones with accents of crimson and deep shadow. Wide-angle perspective, ultra-realistic rendering in 4K resolution. Inspired by classic folk horror and psychological fear. Think of The Witch, Midsommar, Blair Witch Project, and The Ritual. Perfect for horror storytelling, concept art, or atmospheric backgrounds.